Okay, brothers and sisters, our next speaker is going to be Wayne Bennett from Stand Up to Racism.
I want to thank everybody for coming here, and I particularly want to thank Isha for speaking, and Muazzam for speaking so well about injustice, because it seems to be everywhere. And I think the call for justice is essential. I want to say that I'm not a fan of the Independent Police Commission. I used to call them the IPCC, the Independent Police Cover-Up Commission, because there's been 1,000 deaths and nothing has ever been done for any officer to be brought to justice. But the IPCC has produced a report that said the officer involved in the murder of Rashan should be suspended, and he shouldn't be treated as they are now as a witness. I don't believe if you're involved in killing someone that you're a witness. I watched this happen. No, you did it. So you're not a witness. Actually, usually, if that is any one of us, actually would be a suspect. That's what they'd say, because you're involved in it. Because you're a suspect. You cannot be a witness. Now, the IPCC has said that the person should be suspended, and the Met Police have turned around and said they're not suspending him. Now, we've been told for the last 15 years that everything's been referred to the IPCC. Calm down, go home. And then what they've turned around and said really is, we don't need to listen to that. And it's a very important lesson, I think, because of all the deaths that have taken place, we have to demand, because this is on film, the evidence is there. The same thing happened to the Costas. We've had 5 deaths in the space of less than 6 months. And we have to ask why. Why is this starting to happen now? One of the reasons why it's starting to happen, I think, is because the increased level of Islamophobia has also led to a question of how the state deals with people. And what that means is that you have what they call more robust policing. The idea is that you're safer if that takes place. And I think what it is a denial of rights for people. And part of what Stand Up to Racism has to do is to make sure that people get a voice. We want to make sure that there's 2 campaigns. There's the DeCosta campaign, but I want to talk about Rashan's campaign. Because at the moment, what they usually do is they try and kill your campaign by going quiet. The first thing they do is assassinate a character. Remember they said there was drugs involved. There was a report that came out before anything had taken place. And they did the same with the DeCostas. I believe they used the same PR agency. They didn't bother to change the names. That was a level of contempt that they had. And therefore, what they're trying to do now is they try and outweight the family's call for justice. So we're launching a campaign to make sure that we can fund the family's campaign, and we can also fund the funeral. I want you to stand. It will be called, Rashan's father is going to be in charge of the campaign, and I want to make sure that Isha can make sure that he completely continues to call for justice for his son, and that the money that goes in to the police, which is funded by taxpayers, is not used to silence the voices of those people they're supposed to turn around and supposedly protect, because something's going fundamentally wrong. And you can only have that happen if Amber Rudd turned around and endorsed that. That would have to go to the highest levels. That means Theresa May and Amber Rudd are involved in that. That's the same Theresa May, by the way, that said that something was going wrong in the police, in the way that they treated young black people, and there had to be an urgent inquiry. The same cover-up, the same hypocrisy is involved in that. And that's the reason why we have to speak out. We have to speak out, I think, because if we talk about the return of more draconian laws, if they talk about internment, if they talk about treating people as suspects. I went to Parsons Green after the attack that took place there. Do you know what I was told by sisters that walk in there? That people are threatening them on the street. And I think that's part of the thing that's actually covered up. I went to Manchester after the bomb took place there. There had been mass arrests and internment of people, and it didn't even reach the media. And we have to turn around and say this is unacceptable, because I tell you, if they start doing that to people today, they'll do that to you tomorrow. That's what actually happens. What you end up with is a loss of rights that people took for granted, and that actually gets pushed back. The idea that you attack asylum seekers, one of the things they said that somebody might be an asylum seeker, might be a refugee. Actually, the poorest and the most penniless people are being targeted for the biggest problems that are taking place in our society. And the people that are responsible for it, for maintaining it, are the same people that I think are responsible for most of the problems. It's 10 years, by the way, since the end of the crash. That's the truth. I call it the giant bailout of people. And if you want to understand when they say, they turn around and say, they put a report, I went to the TUC last week, and they said there's a problem of people with low wages. And they said, and then they mentioned Eastern European workers in the same breath. I think that's a return of more racism. But the idea that rich people say that poverty is caused by poor people, that's the problem. There's all these poor people trying to be poor. And then actually what we need to do is distinguish between those that are black, those that are white, those that are Jewish, and blame each other, and that's the way that you rule. Emperor Tiberius coined that phrase. He said, divide and rule, and let the poor kill each other. This mosque, by the way, used to be a synagogue. And the reason why I mention that is because when Oswald Mosley went down to Dalston Junction, this mosque mobilised against it. This synagogue mobilised against them. It had to, because the same people are doing that. Now look at what happened in America. Donald Trump sees a group of people march on the street that says the Jews will never overcome us, right? Then somebody runs a car into a woman and murders them, and he says, I can't tell the difference. So what do you do when you have that situation? I tell you what you do, you give someone a state visit, don't you? Because they can't tell the difference between a Nazi and someone that opposes them. I think we've got problems. Well, we haven't got problems, they've got problems, because, when they start talking about North Korea, they said that Kim Il-sung's mad, and then they talk about Donald Trump. He reads today. I think we've got problems. I'm going off my record here, I'm sorry, on the film. But what I want to talk about is the importance of resistance. That if you have resistance, that you can get justice. I remember the Macpherson inquiry, where Doreen was told that she would never get justice for Stephen. She did get justice for Stephen because she got justice because people stood out collectively against it. I know that's a case that took place a long time ago. I remember Tommy Robinson saying that the EDL would march down all the streets of the UK. Actually, Tommy marches on his own at the moment because we broke that organisation. I remember the BNP saying that they would have more than one councillor inside London. We broke that by collective action. And I think we have to remember that the hope of unity and the hope of struggle gives the voice to the voiceless. And that's part of the reason why we want to make sure there's a bigger stand up to racism. But I want to emphasise this question of making sure that Isha's campaign is funded and supported. We're launching that campaign. That will be launched as a GoFund campaign. And we want to make sure it's funded at the same time as questioning the whole question of why there isn't a proper voice for people and why that police officer isn't suspended. He should be suspended on the basis of giving respect to the life that he took. And no public servant should be able to get away with that. I remember being a teacher, and if anything had happened inside the school or the college that I taught in, I would have been immediately suspended. Why are the police treated as they're above the law, and why are they treated in that way? I think that we have to make sure that that's immediately put back, and that we turn around and make sure we get justice for all the families of the deaths that have taken place. We've built up an anti-racist tradition. Let's make sure it's built bigger and is deeper. And I'll end up with the words of both Diane Abbott, who's the MP for this local area, and Jeremy Corbyn, when they stood outside welcoming refugees to this country. They said, if we don't stand together, we'll fall apart. We'll fall apart together. I still think that stands today as what we are trying to do and make sure is put into practice. We need a bigger resistance against this, and we need to have more voices and make sure we speak out. So thank you for coming here today, but more importantly, I want to ask everybody here to not treat yourself as coming to a meeting, but treat yourself as people that are organisers, treat yourself as people that can make a difference, because you can make a difference by speaking up. I'll end on that. Women got their vote because they fought for it. LGBT rights are here today because people have spoken out for it, and the rights that have been wronged today can only be righted by people speaking out and standing in unity. And I'll stop there.